While the nation awaits the ruling from the High Court, we wanted to walk you through the process. How does the Supreme Court work behind the scenes? What kind of legwork and research takes place? And how do the justices communicate with each other? Tom Hodson is currently the Berman Professor of Communications at Ohio University, but he is a former Judicial Fellow for former Chief Justice William Rehnquist. He joins me live tonight from Ohio. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, Brent. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's begin with how the justices communicate. Do they consult with each other? Do they debate back and forth? To what extent do they collaborate or not?
Well, there is a meeting in the conference room, the justices' conference room, the week after oral arguments. During that time, they openly debate the case. They go in order of seniority. They talk about their opinions of the case based upon the written briefs and the oral arguments. And then the Chief Justice takes a vote. They actually vote on how they're going to decide the case after that first conference. Based upon the vote, then, the Chief Justice assigns the writing of the opinion of the court to one of the justices in the majority, or if he's in the majority, he may take that assignment on himself.
So, in a sense, if we know which justice is going to write the opinion, that gives us a peek at how the court might rule.
That could give you a peek at how the court might rule and who might be in the majority. That's certainly the case. Once the Chief Justice assigns the opinion, then basically after that, everything is done in writing. The justice who is writing the opinion, or the Chief Justice himself, if it's him, he'll draft the opinion with the help of law clerks, and then that opinion will be circulated among the justices. They'll come back with written suggestions, written changes, and then they'll see how many justices want to sign on to that majority opinion. There are also such things as concurring opinions and dissenting opinions, and in major cases such as this, it's not unusual to have concurring opinions and dissenting opinions. In that case, each justice who is part of a concurring opinion, which means that they agree with the outcome but for different legal reasons than the majority, that justice may write his or her own opinion, or again, they may circulate it and have other justices sign on to it. Dissenting opinions, the same thing. A dissenting opinion means that we disagree with the outcome and we disagree with the court's reasoning. In a case as major as the one coming up tomorrow, we'll probably see majority opinion, concurring opinions, and dissenting opinions.
Tell me a little bit about the research involved. Is everything heard in those oral arguments, or do the justices do a fair amount of research themselves? I can only imagine there's overwhelming case reading, opinions, past rulings, perhaps in this case constitutional law that they have to look at. How do they sort through all of that to help base their opinion on however they're going to rule?
Well, each side, as they present a case to the court, presents written briefs. These are voluminous legal documents that, based on precedent or prior case rulings, putting forth legal theories, legal arguments, and supporting them with prior case law. The justices read those thoroughly, and they'll read them prior to the oral arguments. At oral arguments, then the justices have the opportunity to question the attorneys, both for the appellant and the appellee, the person bringing the appeal and the person against whom the appeal is brought. They answer the justices' questions, and all of that, the briefs and the oral argument, goes into that initial conference. After that, each individual justice has 3 or sometimes 4 law clerks that they have working just for each individual justice. And the justice works with those law clerks to do additional research if it's necessary in helping them formulate their opinion.
Are there limits to where or who a justice could consult when they're trying to research or define their ruling? Is there a limit to what they can do and where they can go?
The justice will not go outside the court, will barely go outside of his or her own chambers, and that means their individual staff. They won't seek outside resources. They won't consult with national experts. It's very insular within the court, and really each justice decides the case for him or herself. Then they try to mesh those into the opinions of the court. If there's an overwhelming majority, they go into the majority opinion, or like I said, they could have concurring or dissenting opinions. But everything is done within the confines of the case. The briefs, the oral arguments, the research done by the justice and the clerks, and the opinion writing.
You mentioned that after the oral arguments are made that they get together in some kind of a conference setting and they talk about it. How long does that deliberation usually take? Is that something that's a few hours or a day, or might they have that kind of conference for several days?
Well, they schedule it for a day. Sometimes they schedule it for a half day, knowing that this oral argument was a long one. I don't know in particular how long they scheduled this for. They keep that pretty close to the vest, but I'm sure that they met for a good part of a day. It's interesting that that conference room where the justices meet to discuss this case, it's not like we see in Congress where there are a lot of staff people around. It is just the justices. The clerks are not allowed in that conference. No staff of the court, no staff allowed in there. The marshal stays outside. The only time that sanctity was really violated was one time a marshal burst in to say that President Kennedy had been assassinated and had been shot. But otherwise, it is just the justices. They're doing their own work. They're making their own arguments. They're debating the case just among themselves, the 9 justices.
Professor Tom Hodson, thanks so much for your insight. I know everybody's going to be reacting to whatever the ruling is tomorrow, but it's interesting to kind of know how they got there. So we thank you for your insight into the U.S. Supreme Court.
I appreciate your time and appreciate the questions. Thank you.